She kept an entire town in fear. She chose the weakest because they were easier to kill. The victims opened the door themselves. She came with a smile and a hammer, like an ordinary housewife, and for years, she remained elusive. This story concerns everyone. Krasnoufimsk stands apart. Far from large cities, young people don't stay here for long. They move to Yekaterinburg, Perm, or even farther. The elderly remain lonely and defenseless, easy victims for an executioner. An 80-year-old woman, Vera Vasilievna, a sociable, well-known neighbor, hadn't been seen for days. People worried. Had she fallen ill? Or had something worse happened? She didn't answer the phone. The police were called, and the apartment had to be forced open. She was lying in the kitchen, her frozen eyes staring at the ceiling. Beneath the back of her head, on the floor, there was blood. Investigators rushed to a conclusion: an accident. She had fallen from a chair and hit her head on the table. But they quickly realized they were wrong. It was enough to look into the room. Things were scattered, wardrobe doors thrown open, pillows ripped apart, everything turned upside down. It was a familiar picture to detectives. Someone had been searching for money and valuables. Experts established that Vera Vasilievna had been killed by several blows to the head with a hammer. Who did it? A mentally ill person, or someone acting for robbery? Many versions were considered. They checked relatives and acquaintances, but the killer was not found. It happened in 2002, and at that time no one could have imagined that this death marked the beginning of the Krasnoufimsk maniac. The next elderly woman was found dead just a month later. This time, the victim's face was pressed under a pillow. The cause of death was the same: severe head trauma. A small amount of money disappeared from the apartment, in rubles and in dollars. That was already a lead. Investigators checked where dollars might have been exchanged, but among hundreds of names they found no one connected to the murdered woman. They still didn't rush to link the two murders. At first there were no grounds to merge the cases into one investigation. No one in Krasnoufimsk yet believed a serial killer was operating there, but soon the police had to accept it. A third elderly woman was killed on Rogozinikovic Street, 36. The apartment door was wide open. Lydia Eremeva was found by neighbors on the hallway floor still alive. Next to her lay the bloody murder weapon, a hammer, but she didn't survive until the ambulance arrived. Suspicion fell on her adult son, who still lived with his mother, though he wanted his own place. Such motives exist, but he had an alibi, and on the hammer they found a smeared fingerprint. The killer was a stranger, someone who entered and vanished. The prints were checked across regions, no matches. From June to December 2002, 6 more pensioners were killed in that small Ural town, all by the same scenario. Someone got inside, struck the head with a hammer, and robbed them. Krasnoufimsk trembled, but investigators couldn't identify the culprit. 3 main versions dominated: a mentally ill misogynistic maniac, a killer taking revenge for an old trauma linked to an elderly woman, or seemingly the least likely, murders for profit. The stolen sums were small, and profit seemed doubtful. Meanwhile, victims kept appearing, and the police still didn't even know whether the killer was male or female. The killer surfaced only a year later, in February 2003. One evening, an elderly woman found a note on her front door: "Tomorrow at 11, be home. A social worker will come at the appointed time." A pleasant voice behind the door didn't raise suspicion. She opened and immediately received a kitchen knife stabbed to the chest. She screamed and called for help. The killer hadn't expected that. She planned to finish the victim in a single move. But the wound was not fatal. Neighbors heard the screams and looked out, seeing the attacker running away. Not a man, but a woman. Fingerprints on the knife matched those found at earlier murder scenes. The shocking news spread fast. The elusive Krasnoufimsk maniac was a blonde in a skirt. Witnesses described a nice-looking woman of average build, light shoulder-length hair. A composite sketch was made and posted on every poll with a dramatic public appeal for residents to unite like Americans against the sniper killer. The poster and the call to action left no one indifferent. Blondes of that age dyed their hair just in case. People installed iron doors, and operatives arrived from across the region. Mass checks began. Social workers, medical staff, any women who could plausibly enter pensioners' apartments. Thousands were fingerprinted, yet none matched. Panic grew when police began summoning women of the town one by one. A traveling offender version was developed. A federal railway line ran through Krasnoufimsk. If the killer came from Perm-Krai or Bashkiria, more than 70 women were checked in nearby regions, but nothing. The situation turned into a witch hunt. The sketch was printed in newspapers. Psychics and numerologists tried to trace the killer, and time passed more than a year until she reminded everyone of herself again, where no one expected it. Yekaterinburg, a big, busy city, factories smoke, cars rush. But there are districts where life moves slowly. In 2005, murders of elderly women appeared there. Then, 400 kilometers away from Yekaterinburg, in Sarava city, where 4 railway branches intersect, 4 elderly women were killed in just 2 days. The fake social worker now killed regularly, like clockwork, and no longer limited herself to one town. People watched for her in commuter trains and inner-city buses, but she changed her appearance skillfully and remained unrecognizable. Sometimes she tried to stage accidents. She would open the gas and light a candle, but the candle burned out and the gas dispersed by some lucky chance. No explosion and no fire occurred. Her plan was imperfect, and failures eventually trapped her. In the small settlement of Akit, Sverdlovsk Oblast, less than 5,000 residents, everyone knew everyone. One day, a local woman noticed a suspicious stranger wandering among houses, peering into windows, asking questions, not realizing she was being watched from behind a curtain. The stranger eventually slipped behind a door, and the neighbor called the district officer. The officer knocked and rang for a long time silence. The killer, caught in place, had already dragged the homeowner's body into the bathroom and washed away the blood. With nowhere to run, she calmly prepared what she would say in an interrogation. And then she was inexplicably lucky. The officer, tired of pounding the door, simply left. The killer slipped out and disappeared again. For 5 years they failed to catch her, and even when she was accidentally discovered at a crime scene, they foolishly let her go. Then the police had to intensify their work. In Nizhny Tagila city, surrounded by prisons, criminality was high, but the murder of a high-ranking police official's relative was extraordinary. In 2008, in an apartment on Gazetnaya Street, the mother of a deputy head of the local was killed. Such cases are investigated at lightning speed. 6 days later, at the railway station, police detained a petty swindler. Marina Valieva, she resembled the sketch, the age fit, and authorities celebrated the capture of the untraceable criminal, believing she had already taken many lives. At the first interrogation she said, "I hate old women," and told a dramatic story. As a teenager she was brutally raped, while an elderly neighbor heard everything through the wall and didn't help. So she was supposedly taking revenge on grandmothers. People believed it, but the story soon collapsed. A week after the arrest, Valieva wrote a new confession. She had lied, and her previous statements were forced under torture. 3 operatives were removed, later tried, and received real prison terms. Their creative fabrication sent the investigation down a false path and, most importantly, gave the real killer confidence. She decided she would never be caught. Years passed. In Krasnoufimsk, where the killings had begun, fear faded, vigilance weakened. And that was exactly what she needed. In 2010, the 17th victim, 81-year-old Anna Povarina, was killed, again hammer blows. Her pension and savings stolen 16,000 rubles. The handwriting and method were identical, and fingerprints matched. She was acting almost openly, but inflated self-confidence played a fatal joke. Friends of the murdered woman told investigators that before her death, Povarina had started renovations and hired a woman named Irina. Finding her was easy. A neighbor said the worker was the wife of the victim's nephew. The resemblance to the sketch was uncanny, almost the same face. Irina was detained for clarification, and she stayed calm, like someone with a spotless conscience. Lieutenant Colonel Igor Avryanov performed the fingerprint examination. After years of searching, he knew the pattern by heart and was certain he would recognize it instantly. And the prints matched. At Gaidamachuk's home, they found more evidence: a hammer and a knife she carried. when attacking elderly women. A handwriting analysis confirmed she wrote the social worker notes. There could be no doubt. It was Irina Gaidamachuk, born in 1972 in Karpinsk, Sverdlovsk Oblast. Her family later moved to Nyagan in County Mansi Autonomous Okrug. She grew up an ordinary child, didn't stand out in school, then entered a university, some sources say law, others psychology. She became pregnant, married, had a daughter, then began drinking heavily and going on binges. She sent her 6-year-old daughter to an orphanage and continued drinking. In the late 1990s, she met Yuri Kuznetsov from Krasnoufimsk, a bank driver who came on a business trip. A relationship started. She became pregnant again and moved to him without finalizing her divorce. They had a daughter, and neighbors later recalled that Irina seemed like an ideal mother. She cared for her child, walked her to school, served on the parents' committee. But when the girl finished primary school, Irina returned to alcohol and even drank away class money collected for a celebration, causing a scandal. Her civil husband fought her alcoholism and tried not to give her money, so she began borrowing from neighbors under false pretenses. When people stopped, she started sewing to earn, paid her debts, then used the income to buy alcohol. In 2002, she began hunting pensioners. Some say the motive was hatred of the elderly. They've already lived their life, more likely. She redirected a conflict, including tensions with her mother-in-law. Her first crime was spontaneous. While doing repairs in a pensioner's apartment on Uktomsky Street, she decided to steal money for alcohol, found a hammer, struck the woman several times, killing her, took the cash, and went on a binge. Because no one knew she had been doing repair work there, she wasn't caught hot. How did she evade the police for years? The answer was almost absurdly simple. She lived in Krasnoufimsk without a passport, and when police summoned women by registration, they called people to departments by their place of. She wasn't in those lists. A psychological evaluation declared her legally sane. The criminal case contained more than 400 volumes. From 2002 to 2010, 17 elderly women became her victims, roughly aged from 60 to 90. The stolen amounts were small. In total, not much. The sentence was comparatively mild, 20 years in a general regime colony. Because Russian law does not provide life imprisonment for women, the district officer who once left the door and missed her was later fired. Irina's daughter suffered a severe shock after the ugly truth about her mother became public. She faced intense pressure from townspeople and cruel mockery from peers. And for a long time, her main protector was her father, Yuri Kuznetsov, who never suspected he had lived for years with the Krasnoufimsk maniac. To not miss new stories, subscribe to the channel, like, and leave comments. Your opinion matters.